Yeah. All right. Well, hey, good morning, everybody. I am Randy, the news guy. Thanks for joining me today. And I'm going to give this little housekeeping first. Like, subscribe, share, all of that fun stuff, depending upon what platform you're on. And today, I am super excited to have Mads Singers on the show. I've had Mads on my original podcast, Running the Bases, probably about, I don't even know. It was maybe 3 years ago, 2.5 years ago, something like that. And I've seen Mads a couple of times at a few SEO conferences. And so I thought, well, I got to get Mads on hot off the press. For those of you who don't know Mads, let me share. This is Mads. I love on your, hey, I'm Mads Singers. That so like, yeah, makes sense. Put it right out there. Um,
I'm not
and
hiding.
yeah, you're not hiding. No. But listen, Mads, for those of you who don't know Mads, I'm going to give a very quick little intro, but I'm going to just say, hey, Mads, why don't you tell us about yourself? Mads has worked with very big world global companies doing management and consulting. And he's helped and has worked with industry leaders in SEO and e-commerce and agencies and SaaS businesses, all different kinds. But Mads, I'm going to let you hey, tell us a quick who is Mads and some of the stuff that you've done.
Yep. Yeah, I'm a management coach or consultant, if you will, and really my passion is one, building great teams. So I currently own 6 companies, and number 2 is helping other people do the same. So I spend about 25 to 30% of my time coaching, and then the remainder of the time I spend on my own companies. But really my passion is definitely in the sort of people management game. I really love the difference I can make, because when you look at the world across, there's so many people who are bad managers. Now, reality is no one want to be a bad manager. Like no one wakes up in the morning and says, I want to do a bad job, right?
Yeah.
Just doesn't happen. Or at least it's very, 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 very few. When people are not doing a good job, it's typically because they don't know better. And the biggest thing about management is that while there's a lot of people doing sales training and customer service training and SEO training, there's very few people engaging in management training. So the most important people in most companies often have the least training in what they're doing. And that's what I'm here to fix. So it seems crazy that you give more training to a sales guy than the person managing the sales guys. Seems crazy you give more SEO training to SEOs than the person managing the SEOs. And that's I mean, why it is the case in most places, I still don't know. But yeah, that's definitely my number one thing.
So I absolutely, we're going to dig into that in management and developing people and leaders. You mentioned you have 6 companies. That's a lot. I have 1 company, and it seems like that keeps me running fast. But how do you stay on top of 6?
Hire great people and let them figure stuff out. So reality is, like, I spend a lot of time traveling. I love events. Networking is the simplest way to grow big companies, right? Because most of the time, you can sit at home and you can work hard, and you can sit at home in your basement for 3 years and you will only ever get so far. But reality is, when you start networking and connecting with other people, when you meet people face to face, like it's the hack in most business cases, right? When I first started in the corporate world, and all the books I read all said something about networking, and I am very introvert by nature, and took me a long time to figure out people and figure out how to communicate well with people and so on, right? But I invested the time because I understood how important it was, and it's one of the core things that enable me to do what I'm doing today, right? So,
Yeah.
but the ability to run companies is really putting the right people in place, working with the right people, and helping them grow and develop, right? So just like
Yeah.
I'm fundamentally doing the same with my team as I'm doing with my clients. Like I'm helping them become better managers. I'm helping them to take ownership and
Yeah.
responsibility to grow the company so that I don't have to. And typically every year I do about 3 or 4 months of travel.
Mm.
So typically from April to end of July, early August, I usually travel. So usually it used to be a couple of months North America, a couple of months Europe. This year it's 3 months Europe. Um, but yeah, in those time frames, I work very little, and because of that, my core focus again is basically one of the things I do with all the companies is I want the company to be bigger when I get home than when I left, right? And that's sort of a simple goal for my businesses is that they grow even when I'm pretty away and
Yeah.
not involved at all, right?
Yeah.
Otherwise, my focus is generally like having one-to-ones with the people running things, and then doing team meetings on occasion and so on. But yeah.
Mm. Uh, well, I applaud you for both your own mindset and applying what you preach right to your own companies, which is very cool because then it's kind of like you're doing your own uh, case studies, so to speak, with your own business and developing your team. But I shouldn't. Whether I call it a case study, but for you, you've got years of experience doing this stuff, so I'm sure you've got all kinds of success stories you can kind of talk about. Um, I find it amazing though, so that you can travel like that, like you've described. How do you check in at all with your businesses, your companies while you're traveling around Europe? Earlier, you told me you were in Budapest, which I'm like, I would love to get to Budapest. I got to get there one of these days. But what does that look like then for you? Like, say, a week in the life of traveling Mads and your 6 companies.
Yeah, so the weeks are slightly different. So when I travel, like a lot of them I do speaking, right? So a lot of the time I'm at a conference. Um,
Mm,
that's slightly different. So last week, for example, I was visiting friends in Spain, and this week I'm visiting my girlfriend is from Budapest, and we're visiting some of her friends and family. But typically, when I travel, I still do my one-to-ones with the people who report directly to me. That's one of my sort of favorite management philosophies. Now, when I'm at an event or at a conference, like what I try to do is either do it very early in the morning or late in the evening or whatever. But one of the absolute core things is that when you look at most people, they often make the mistake of thinking they're too busy for their staff, right? But
mm,
one of the core things when you're dealing with people is to spend the time that you're spending on the business with the most important people instead of spending that time doing stuff, right? Because
yeah.
if I do things, I fix a problem. If I spend time with my people, they fix the problem and they will keep fixing the problems in the future, right?
Mhm.
So that's my core focus is really the one-to-ones, and it's very much also to show people how important they are for the business, because reality is that if I'm traveling around, sometimes I'm really busy, but when you find the time to still talk to your staff, even then when you're traveling and busy, like they understand how much they appreciate it. And for me,
Right.
it's about showing them how important they are to the company and the success of the company.
Yeah.
Because reality is that if they feel they're valued, like all people want the same. We want to feel important. We want to feel valued. We want to feel we matter. And
Hmm.
that's no different for me than anyone else, right?
Yeah.
Everyone wants to feel that. And the best way to show people is to give them a bit of your time.
Right. Right. How, so with the one-on-ones, I do this similar with my team. Uh, do you do that once a week? More than once a week? I do
Once a
it
week.
once a week with my team. That's what you do as well with the individuals.
I'm pretty sure you started doing that after we spoke last time. So
Oh, hey, straight up, brother. I will tell you, uh, you, even when you were on my first podcast on Running the Bait. So what's that? 2.5 years, 3 years ago? Probably more than that, actually. Um, you like kicked my butt and we're like, you got to work yourself out of the business. If you don't doing that, you really don't have an asset or a business. You just got a job. And I mean, all of a sudden my like I was way too much embedded in my business as far as the day-to-day processes. And so I'll be your case study for this morning. But after talking with you and you're like kicking my butt, I'm like, okay. Started building my team. I got a great team now. And and I do some of the practices that you mentioned. I meet individually with my leaders in the company, and I do one-on-ones with them. We have a scheduled time, during the course of the week. And I did something just a couple of weeks ago that I had never done.
Tell
in
me.
the what am I on 8 years of having my agency and our business. I went to Iceland for 10
Nice.
days and I pulled my computer out twice, and it was only because I was like, I
That
got up
happens.
I got up early in the morning. My family was still sleeping, and so like, well, I'll just go online and see what's going on. But otherwise, and even then, I didn't do anything aside from, hey, you know, I had some communication. But for me, that was like, and my wife even mentioned like, this was really bizarre, you not getting up, because normally what I would do, we'd go on vacation. I would get up at the crack of dawn and I would work like 2, 3 hours in the morning while my family is still sleeping and getting ready. And then by, 10 o'clock when they're all ready to go, I'd be like, okay, I'm done working and let's go. Um, this time we went, I was like, I slept in even sometimes. You know, I did 2 mornings where I like went online, but it was only because I'm like, well, everybody's still sleeping. I'm kind of up. And I read the news more than anything, I think. And it was a much different experience. And it was great. But it was purely because I took your initial advice, 3+ years ago. B, I really dove in and developed a great team and have been developing them for the last 2 years so that, I could do what I just did. And yeah, it was great. It was fabulous.
Awesome. Well, two challenges for you. So the next
Oh
challenge
God,
is
don't do it to me.
the next challenge, Randy, is a month.
A
Uh,
month.
the next challenge is a month
You know,
because
yeah,
yeah, in a week you can have a bunch of stuff that just kind of sitting there and waiting for you. In a month, that's hard.
yeah.
So
I will say this though. I didn't have a bunch of stuff waiting for me. I
good.
really, empowered my, what I will say that the company leaders. I'm like, you know how to answer these questions. And they just did it. They attacked, and so I came back. I'm like, here's a couple of things I could chime in on. But really, it was like I did the one-on-one. So we flew back on Monday. I usually have one-on-ones with different people, like on a Monday, Tuesday, and a Wednesday. And so it just started. And the first person, my main leader, I'm like, hey, and she was like, yeah, no, everything was good. We didn't have, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, wow. I think our very first conversation back was like 15 minutes long because she was like, yeah, everything is good. Nothing. I'm like,
It's
man,
a good thing when you start taking time away. What happens is you're also making your team more comfortable because the
yes,
first time you do it, they're a bit like,
yes,
oh, are we gonna be
yes,
okay? And then the more time you do it, they get empowered, they grow
yeah,
more,
yeah,
right?
yeah,
Because they start feeling that confidence,
yeah, yeah,
and it's actually very healthy for you
yeah,
team or for your team specifically to take the
yeah,
time off, not just for you, but also for your team to feel more empowered and to feel
yeah,
better, right? So
yes,
that's absolutely cool.
yeah.
The second thing, Randy,
So the
is
first one was go for a month. My wife would love that actually. So she'd be like, yeah, let's go.
yep, and nothing like a happy wife.
Yeah, I
So
know. Happy walk,
that's a
happy
good
life.
challenge.
That's right. All
The,
right,
the,
number
s-
two.
the second question is, are you using HeyRamp for your one-to-ones?
Okay. Hey, Ramp. I should know what the hell this is. No, I'm not using it. I don't know what that is
Great.
exactly. So, all right, tell me about it.
HeyRamp.com is the best tool for one-to-ones, and it will even tie up. So basically, it's a tool specifically built. It have personality testing and so on in it as well.
All right.
But it's built specifically for one-to-ones and very specifically for being able to tie up one-to-ones into performance reviews.
Uh,
So, when you're doing one-to-ones throughout the year, what it will
right,
fundamentally do is help you consolidate all of that data.
right,
So
right.
if wherever you do performance reviews every 6 months or every 12 months, it will then basically make your life in doing that significantly easier.
Interesting. I'll flash it up here. I had to go on my other computer over on this side and like, oh, what is it? And now I drop it in on the chat over here. So, hey, Ram. So this is very cool. This doesn't happen to be one of your businesses, does
That
it?
is definitely one of my businesses.
Nice. Uh, so this is great. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Well, I was just kind of doing performance appraisals and reviews. Just started doing that right before I went on vacation. So,
Yeah.
so this would have been helpful and very nice.
This get very good. It gets particularly good when you've been doing it for a while, because obviously, if you do a performance appraisal in the beginning, then obviously there's
Yeah,
no data. But
yeah,
what's really good about this one is it will basically gather a lot of the data that you're doing on your one-to-ones, and
right.
it will mean that, if you have done it for at least 6 months or so, you have a good data set to do your appraisals and everything. And yeah, it's
So is this a platform that we would, so like generally right now I meet on like Google Meet, but is this a platform that we would meet on, or am I
no,
just
no.
recording
So
like data points to say
this is
like we discussed on Monday we talked about XYZ with you're going to do this and
Yeah. So basically, what it is, it's going to be your people management platform outside of, so not project management. So it's not
right,
a
right,
task management system, but it's
right,
basically tracking all the goals. Are they hitting their goals? Are they hitting their objectives? What to talk about in the one-to-ones? How are you evaluating their performance?
mm-hmm,
So on a regular basis, you evaluate their performance, both so they know how they're doing, because
right,
that's one of the big challenges is often staff members, both the ones doing really well, often don't know how well they're doing,
right,
and the ones doing not so well often don't know how poorly they're doing. So this is also very helpful in terms of giving
right,
people more feedback.
right,
It's also very good, like you can track things, like for example, when you have a bigger team, right, you can track things like what are
yeah,
the risk of people leaving, what are the risk of
right,
like people issues and so on. But it's
right,
basically the focus is the system you use after you have hired people to manage them well.
mm.
And all the
And then
personality testament. Last time we talked a little bit about DISC as well and behaviors.
yeah,
So
yeah,
you can also do completely free. You can do unlimited DISC test for your entire team.
yeah, I saw that
So
you
so
link right
that
in there
that's
for it.
that's part of it, right? So you can do
Yeah,
at absolute no cost. You can do tests for all of your teams, anyone you're interviewing, and so on.
yeah.
So that's also super powerful.
So is this, can you also use this kind of through the tiers of your company? So
Yes,
the
that's
person
the
that
whole point.
reports to me, they, obviously, but they can use it for the people that they're working with that fall
Yes.
under them as well.
Yeah. And it's built up in a structured way, right? So
Okay.
there's one of the big things, like our outsourcing company with 200 some people. The problem is it can be hard to see what's happening down in the layers when you have a company that's
Right,
size.
right,
But the
right,
benefit with Ramp is that you can see what's happening down in the organization. You can see, are the managers, 3 steps down? Are they doing their one-to-ones? What's the performance of their staff? What
right.
is what's happening? Where are the issues, right?
Yeah, yeah,
So it basically allow you to do all of that good stuff.
yeah.
So
Nice. Very nice. Yeah. Well, funny. Yeah. Does this happen to be one of your companies?
One
Uh,
one of many.
well, one of many. Very good. Um, So I'm just going to remind folks, hey, if you have any questions for Mads, go ahead and drop them in the comments right there, and we'll get to them. Say hey to all of the people that we've seen thus far, Terry and Nigel and Salim. All right, good to have you on board. Appreciate it. Um, uh, I have a question, and this is about, so in thinking about management, and you have these folks that are out there, and you're doing one-to-ones on them. You're talking about performance reviews or appraisals. How do you approach, or what is your consult on you having a staff member, team member that's not performing at the level that you think they should be, and they're not responding to your direction?
The first number one step is make it clear to them that they're not performing the way they should be.
Hmm.
And this is again why the HeyRamp is great, because it can help very much clarify that you're
Hmm.
performing below expectation, right? And one of the core things is obviously when someone performs below expectation for a period of time, obviously at some point you get to the level of saying, hey, we have not seen the performance we need over the last month or over the last couple of months. If you want to keep working here, that need to change.
Yeah.
Right. So one, it's helping you document and give you the data to share with them in a way that's simple and understandable, and help them understand what they're not doing good enough. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Now, in most companies, for most roles, you will have some kind of metric, right? So there'll be some kind of KPI that they're supposed to hit, or some kind of goal or objective that they're supposed to hit, right? And those can often be relatively black and white. So if you have a sales guy, they might need to get 5 sales a month, or if they're sending out press releases, they might need to send 10 press releases a week. And it's typically, in most roles, you have some KPIs that are really relatively easy to track, that you can then keep good, that you can keep track of and utilize to review their performance against. And basically every time you do that, that obviously put you in a situation where you can then say, hey, this is not where it needs to be. So that's the first step. The first step is understanding and making sure that they know.
Mm-hmm.
And it depends a little bit what the situation is. If it's a new person in the company who doesn't yet have the skills, it's often a question of giving them the support and trying to get them there. And again, like typically when you onboard people, you want to have some goals for the first 3 months of like, what are you looking for? And you want to do that both for them and for you. So you want to have some goal that says, this is what we expect for the first 3 months. And at every month you can sit down and say, okay, in month 1, we expected A, we got B. Are we on track? And already at that point in time, you can call the shot. Now, the benefit with having some early goals like that is you can sit down and ask yourself, am I really confident this person will make it? Because very often what happens is when people don't have those conversations, they're like, yeah, I'm sure they'll make it. I'm sure they'll get there. But when you have some clear goals that are not getting hit, you can obviously continue and you can give them another month to see if they can deliver. But reality is it gives you an opportunity to really have a tough conversation with yourself, right?
Yeah.
And that's absolutely very, very key. The second step then is, if they don't hit it, then be like, hey, we had this goal for your first 2 months, you're not there, and unfortunately we need to let you go. When it's experienced people, so if it's people that used to perform and then stop performing, it is usually personal stuff. It could be a problem at home, problem with a coworker, a problem with their kids, or going through divorce, or it could be it, but it's typically something at home that's an issue, right? And when that's the case, you have to approach it in the same way. The benefit with one-to-ones is if you have a good relationship with people, you typically know what the issue is.
Right.
Because if you have a good relationship with people, you know it even before the issue starts showing up in the one-to-ones, right? They're like, hey, I'm going through this thing. My partner and I is having a divorce or whatever. And, when you then see the performance drop slightly, you're maybe not super surprised.
Right.
Now, the benefit with that is that when you know what's up, you can obviously support people, you can whatever. Sometimes you need to pull people. Like I've had sometimes where we were working with inbound sales teams where we had someone not performing and I had to give them time off because the problem was when they came to work and were not delivering, what happened was we had a lot of expensive leads that was being wasted. So it was better for us to have someone else deal with them that could close them and take the person out of the equation. Now, in most cases, in most jobs, it's better having someone at 60% than not having them, right? But again, when you know and you understand what's happening, you can make those calls. Now, if it's generally poor performance over extended period of time, again, it's key to be quick at it. As soon as you see someone drop, you want to be on the ball. Because what happens is that the longer people stop performing, the harder it is to get back up.
Yeah.
So if you notice like the first week and you're like, hey, what's up, man? Randy, you always deliver. What happened this week? You're more likely to be like, okay, yeah, I'm on it, I'm fixing it and whatever, right? But in many companies, when you're only looking at performance on a monthly basis or the likes, you're going to have a person not perform for an entire month. And already at that point, it's a lot harder to turn it around, right?
Oh, yeah.
You can still do it, but it's a lot harder. So that's one of the core reasons why you want to do your one-to-ones on a weekly basis, and you want to be looking at performance on a very regular basis, right? Because you want to be on the top. And it's about for your staff to understand how important the performance is for you. Because again, your staff want to do a great job. Right. And in a lot of companies, when you as a boss never mention their performance, they're like, yeah, boss man is happy, it's all good. He haven't really screamed at me, so I assume I'm doing okay. But and a lot of managers, they put into your mind and they're like, oh, this person is performing poorly. They know because it's obvious. But most of the time they don't know. When I walk into a company, I work with every company I walk into, there's always a manager that's like, yeah, I have this problem with this person and they haven't really performed for the last 4 or 5 months. And, I'm thinking of firing them. And I'm like, can I have a chat with them? And they're like, sure. I sit down with this person and I says, Randy, do you know you're about to get fired? And when you have a like, where the hell is that coming from?
Yeah, what? Right.
You're like, right. And that's typically like for me, if someone's getting fired and it for bad performance and it comes out of the blue, you're not doing your job as a manager.
Yeah.
Right.
Oh,
So
completely agree with that. Completely agree.
when people are not performing, they need to know and it needs to be clear.
Yeah. Well, and it all comes back to, again, kind of the one-to-ones and you kind of mentioned this a little bit as well. When you do that, you're sending multiple, I think, messages. One, that my time is important and I am investing in you, right? So I'm helping them. They recognize like, hey, Randy's talking with me and he's investing and taking the time with me. Two, I'm also communicating, hey, our performance as a company is important. That's why we're talking about it. And your performance, your contribution to our success as a company is important. That's why we're meeting together. And when you continue to like reinforce that over time, it's less of an instance that I found that people begin to do this, unless exactly like you say, they're going through some personal kinds of things. But generally, and maybe I'm wrong, but I have this belief, I think people want to come, if there's a job that they engage in and they like, I think people come and like, hey, I want to succeed. I want to do well. I want to perform. I think very few people ever come to work and go like, I want to suck. I want to suck at my job.
No one wakes up in the morning and want to do a bad job.
I don't think so either.
Right.
So
when people do a bad job, it's often either they're either not the right person for the job, so wrong cast. They don't have the skills, or that they're not being managed right, or they have personal issues and the likes, right? But that's typically the issue, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And I think you nailed it on the other piece, which is you have to have goals clearly defined and communicated with your team so that they know, here's the goal or here's the threshold for performance. This is what we're trying to hit. I know on my one-to-ones, we talk about that stuff every week with everyone. Okay, where are we here? Here's your KPIs, essentially. I don't use that phrase necessarily with them, but we do talk about their goals and their performance goals. Um, and it just again kind of reinforces that their contribution in meeting these goals enables us as a company to succeed. I don't know, it just seems to go well. Yeah. Not by
Yep.
accident, right? It's very intentional.
Yep.
Yeah, yeah. You wonder if you could expand on this. You talked about as well. You just mentioned this just right casting, I think is how you put the phrase out there, which really means, and I've said it in other ways, like, hey, being sure you got the right people in the right seat on the bus, right? So that everybody's in a place that they can succeed at because they're the right person that matches with that role. You've invested the training with them, right? I don't know. Expand on that maybe a little bit as
Yep.
people are building their teams.
Yeah, I mean, this is where I use personality tests like DISC, and I think it is 3 or 4 years ago. I think we actually did a couple of podcasts, but we talked about that a while back. But a lot of it for me is about personality. So all people have natural strengths and weaknesses,
Yeah.
and some of those things, for some roles, it's critically important. So if you're hiring, for example, an accountant. Now, you want someone who is somewhat conscientious,
Mm,
which is detail oriented, nerdy, loves spreadsheets, right?
right.
If you hire someone who is not conscientious, you're very likely to have a very bad hire for an accounting
Yeah.
position.
Yeah. Yeah.
Same thing, if you're hiring a salesperson, you're looking for someone who's assertive, which means they either have dominance or influence in them. Because again, typically the best sales guys, and I'm not saying you couldn't find a sales guy who's doing okay, who's not assertive, but again, it's the 80-20 or the probably even
Right.
the 90
Right.
10.
Yeah. Yeah.
If you have a pool of candidates and you have two people that are really good and one is assertive and one is not, there's a 99% chance that the assertive person will do better, right?
Mm,
Because again, with something like sales, it's all about being able to pick up the phone, it's make the
right.
move,
Right.
it's
Right.
do what it takes, right? And that's assertiveness. So
And the great thing
fundamental,
about tests like DISC as well, I mean, there's so much data. I mean, this is
yeah,
a test that's been around for years. There's so much data. So when you're talking about, specific traits or skills for a salesperson, well, it's not just somebody's opinion. I mean, you can go and look at the data that says, here's sales guys. And in general, against all of the data of the thousands of people that have taken this assessment, these are the common traits for
yeah,
a successful salesperson.
yeah. And this is, so one of the clients I just worked with in the UK, they
Yeah,
were interviewing about 300 people a month.
yeah,
Like they were aggressively phone sale company, right? And they were interviewing about 300 people a month. And initially they were just interviewing people, and they're like, oh yeah, this guy feels great or this girl feels great or whatever, and hiring. And as soon as they started looking at the right traits, I won't share with you exactly what traits they're looking for, but as soon as they started looking for the traits that they knew succeeded, and by the way, they looked at a team on the floor and they say, wait a minute, when we look at our team, this is what they all have in common.
yeah,
The 20 people out of 30 who's actually performing all have this in common.
yeah,
Let's just hire people like that because
yeah.
we know
Right,
it
right.
works. And they end up hiring a lot less people, but the success rate has gone from, instead of 10% success rate, it's gone to 40% success rate, right?
Right.
Which is significant change.
Significant change. Uh, that's impressive. That's good. Um, yeah, DISC. So people go there, HeyRamp, you can do
Yeah,
get the DISC assessment going on there for you as well.
yeah.
Nice.
And the good thing with this stuff is like it will teach you a lot of things, right? So even within your team, so you can set it up so your team can see each other's test. And there's many things that you can learn from that. So for example, how people communicate, how you most effectively talk to a colleague. So for example, if you have a colleague and you're kind of struggling, if I'm like, hey, I'm struggling to communicate well with Randy, you can actually go in, look at that disk test and say, oh, well, the reason I struggle to communicate with Randy is I keep sending him very long emails, but actually Randy really want to talk on the phone with me. That's his favorite, right?
Yeah.
So I realized if I want to get what I want out of Randy, I should call him instead of sending him very long emails that he doesn't read.
Yeah. How do you know that about me? Because that is exactly I hate reading long emails, and there's no way I'm going to draft a long email. I don't do it.
This is very, very simple. So this
Yes.
is what this is what I teach all my clients. But again,
Yeah.
like you can generally learn to in 30 seconds to a minute looking at another human being, you can learn to just looking at their behaviors, learn to understand how they're motivated, how they communicate, what they're good at, and that's a very, very unfair advantage.
Very nice. Yeah, I feel like I'm meeting with my psychologist here. So let me ask you, let's shift the gear a little bit. And folks, don't forget, write some questions here for Mads. This guy is like the master wizard of consulting and building teams, successful teams. Let's shift a little bit and talk about mindset, because I know you've got a lot of material, a lot of consultation and training on about creating the right mindset for success. So talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, I would say generally the base starting point for success for most people is about ownership. So what I always say is that I take 100% responsibility for anything that happens around me. And what I mean with that is if I'm in a car and someone else makes a mistake and drive into the back of my car, I am still responsible for being where I am at that point in time. Right. So even though it's somebody else's fault, when you look at the world around you, it's so easy to blame other people, blame other things, blame other circumstances. But if you want to really be incredibly successful in life, it's learning to take ownership and say, yep, stuff happened. What can I do to change it?
Right.
Or say, hey, stuff happened, can't change it.
Yeah.
What is the next step for me to move forward? And a lot of people, when they talk to me in the early days, they say I'm crazily positive, but it's not just about positivity. But reality is negativity towards yourself doesn't bring much value. Like a lot of people use like negative motivation to themselves. They're like, oh, I'm so fat, right? But when you're saying to yourself, I'm so fat, you're pointing a very negative picture of yourself in your head. And that's while you might think that that help you take action to fight that, it actually does the opposite, right? So
Right.
the core thing, again, it's not about lying to yourself, but it's
Right.
about looking at yourself and saying, okay, I am not where I want to be. Now, there's one person responsible for that, and that is me, right? There's one person who can change this, and that is me, right? Now, I might make the choice not to change that, right?
Yeah.
I might make that choice and say, hey, right now, this is not my priority. But you have to understand that it's completely in your hands, right? And this is with everything. It's with smoking. It's with any good, any bad habits. I have as many bad habits as most humans, and it's all in our hands, right? So the starting point of a great mindset is understand you own it. Emotions.
Yeah.
When I was younger, I could very easily get very upset and angry and unhappy and all this good stuff. And what I learned was that we are in complete control. And again, it's like the simple question for me is it helpful? So let's say, I don't know, you said some shit to me and I'll get angry right now. Like the point is, there's no situation where me getting angry is gonna benefit anything, right? Like the fact that I'm in a situation where I'm not controlling my emotion and let you make me angry, which is nothing to do with you. It's me choosing to be angry based on what you say or do.
Right.
Right? And this is, again, it comes down to control and ownership. It's like, no one makes you angry. Like,
Right.
if your partner is having an affair, that doesn't make you angry. Your partner had an affair and you choose to be angry. Now, does that help you? No. Was it right of your partner? Likely not. But in the end of the day, when you're not controlling your emotions and when you're letting yourself be ruled by your emotions, um, you're often not making the right choices at that point in
Mm.
time, and you end up doing stupid things that you regret,
Right.
right? And
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
I think one of the biggest things from a mindset standpoint that I learned was really going through that. So it
Yeah.
was really learning to not just control my emotions, but it was really learning to understand and just ask myself the simple question: if I freak out right now, is it going to help the situation? Right. So, for example, if let's say you're flying somewhere and the flight is delayed, if you get angry and start screaming, is that likely to change the situation? Now, if there isn't a flight, there isn't a flight. Like me
Right.
screaming at someone is not going to make a
It's not
flight
going to change
suddenly
it.
move 500 miles in a second,
Right.
right? Like it's not. Now, is there certain situations where being assertive can get you a better outcome? Definitely. Now, most likely, being assertive in a controlled manner is going to get you a better outcome than being angrily upset, right?
Right.
Because again, people's reaction to you.
Yeah.
If you start screaming at someone and they're like, "Oh, well, I'm just an airline person, I can't do
Right.
anything,"
Right.
the only thing they're gonna feel is hatred towards you, and they're gonna
Yes.
be like pissed
Yeah.
right off.
Or,
Whereas if
or
you,
they're going to mirror your right unhinged, and it
yeah,
could really begin to escalate. Yeah.
yeah, yeah, and the whole point is you're not getting any benefit from it, right?
Yeah.
So the
Yeah.
fundamental piece of learning
Yeah.
to control your emotions is, and this is, by the way, also not letting people getting you pissed off, right?
Mm.
Like a lot of people, particularly a lot of people with traumas, are purposely trying to push other people's buttons
Mm.
just to cause conflict, right? Like
Mm.
some people thrive in an environment of conflict, and they appreciate it, they like it, like, and it might not be here, it might be subconsciously, but they're doing it,
Yeah.
right?
Well,
And
and some of it is, and exactly what you just stated, though, is those people tend to be people that have come through traumatic life or upbringing or something, and they create that in their lives now. It's because that's what they're used to. That's what they're comfortable in a odd way, but that is their comfort zone by being in chaos, and they don't know how to operate necessarily when everything is good. And yeah, I will just share very personally, but that's how I grew up, in a world of trauma and chaos. It took me years, well into my adult life, before I could, like, okay, I don't need to operate in that environment. That's not the best environment for me. So I don't need to create this for me. And once I got to that mindset, then my life improved dramatically.
yeah,
Yeah. Yeah, interesting. I I especially, though, do love the ownership piece, taking self-responsibility, because it may sound like, well, a little odd to people, but I will tell you, when you take that step, you shift your mindset from essentially being a victim, like, oh, this happened to me, I'm so right, I would have been, but this happened to me instead. And instead, when you take, like, I'm going to take ownership, then it's empowering. Now I have got control. I have power to control what I want to do, my success in my company, my success in my life, my whatever it is that I'm want to do, right? Want to go forward with. Yeah,
yeah,
it may seem like that connection, but it really is very empowering.
definitely.
Yeah.
That's, yeah, and like it sounds hard, right? Like it sounds like, oh, I can't do that. But and it's not you don't go from 0 to 1 in 5 minutes, right? Like this is something that takes a long time to master, but it's
Yeah,
one of those things. Like the same thing with confidence, right? People think confidence is buying a big car and driving out and showing everyone, and it's nothing to do with it, right? Probably even the opposite effect. Like what I learned at a relatively early age is confidence is a very simple metrics, which is when you say you're going to do something, do you actually believe yourself?
mm,
So a lot of people, they're like, yeah, I'm going to stop smoking on Monday, and oh, I'll go to the gym on Friday, and whatever. They say all these things, and they have the maybe the intention to, but they kind of
mm,
know in the back of their mind that they're not going to do it,
right.
right? And every time you say you're going to do something and you don't do it, every time you let yourself down, you're losing confidence in yourself.
Yeah.
So one of the things that a lot of the
Mm,
clients I work with that are struggling with confidence, one of the things I say is make a lot less promises to yourself, but learn to keep them.
yeah.
Like the thing is, when I say I'm going to do something, I'm going to do it.
Yeah.
Right, and I am 100% convinced of that. Now, I have to believe in it. Like if I'd been smoking for 50 years, I could stop tomorrow. If I was an addict of the worst heroin on the planet and have been for 20 years, I fundamentally believe I could stop tomorrow. Now, I might not be capable of it, but that is the belief that I have in myself because I know that when I say something, I'm going to do it. Right.
Right.
And that's how you build confidence. It's really
Yeah.
saying yes to less things, committing to less things, but being very, very clear when you commit that you are 100% following through.
Right. Right. And your mindset about that plays a critical role as well. So if I say I'm going to stop smoking on Monday, I have to change my mindset to already believe I'm stopping on Monday. I'm going to take these steps. You're already computing, so to speak, but you're putting it in your mind already, the steps necessary in order to make that happen. So you gotta start thinking like, all right, this is what we're gonna do. This is how I'm going to do it. Right? Yeah.
And this is the same thing. Like
So powerful.
take something like this. Like people know when I'm on a podcast, when I'm scheduled to be on a podcast, I will be on a podcast. When I'm set up for a speaking gig, I show up 100% of the time,
Yeah.
right? Like obviously things can happen, life can happen, but
Right.
it needs to be very, 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 very difficult stuff for me not to show up. And
Yeah.
because of that, when people know that you do what you say you're gonna do, they
Yeah.
start trusting you more, they start respecting you more. And again,
Yeah.
that breeds confidence because
Yeah.
when people are like, oh yeah, he always does what he says he's gonna do,
Yeah.
then you start not just having your internal validation, but then you start getting your external validation as well from it.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you showing up this morning. I don't think people wanted to hear me talk for an hour. So
I'm sure that would be good as well.
oh, that's good. So I got to tell you, so you've got so much great stuff. I just, man, I know I could talk with you forever. So folks, go check him out on his website over here at madsingers.com and see just a ton of some of the various resources that's available. I know he's got some free courses that folks can tap into, some training around some of this stuff. I want to shift as well. And so you have all of this great stuff, and you kind of, and I'm not even sure exactly how or where you got your entree into working with and thinking about SEO and working with SEO agencies and company leaders in agencies. But I do know you work with folks in our industry and have been quite successful. And then you put together this like fabulous uh, SEO Mastery Summit, which is a great conference. And when we start talking about, yeah, I want to do the month, right? When you challenge me, like, go do the month. So this is going to be one of those, like, yes, I'm going to come over to this one, and I'm going to take a month while I'm going to do the conference, and then I'm going to go travel around. and just really enjoy myself. But how did you kind of, because I do know enough of your history, you worked with, big companies, and then you moved into a much more of a consultative state and management consulting. How did you start working in the SEO industry? And then what led to SEO Mastery?
Yeah, I mean, originally when I started consulting people, my focus was the corporate world because that was where I was coming from. But I very quickly found a lot more fun and games in working with entrepreneurs, right? Because reality is like, I can go and coach 5 managers in Coca-Cola, and it's not like the
Yeah.
company is gonna explode the week after, right? But with smaller businesses, or when I say small business, I mean sub 200 people. Like when you go and work with some of these business owners and managers, you see significant growth, right? You see,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've had companies probably 10x by now, right? So some of these companies really benefit significantly from it, right? So I've worked with people like Matt Diggity, Kurt Phillips, many of the big ones. Work with the guys over and HREF as well, and like, so a lot of the people that have succeeded is
Mm.
like, so many people in the SEO industry have enough knowledge to make hundreds of millions.
Right.
It's not like they all go and they're all trying to figure out like, oh, teach me this one hack of how I
Right.
can
Right.
get like a tiny incremental change somewhere. Whereas really what they're lacking is management and business skills, right? So when you take a good SEO and you give them management skills and they can suddenly build companies, then you're taking them to the next level, and then you enable them
Yeah.
to make a lot of money, right?
Yeah.
So that's the core thing. I mean, some of the people I work with are incredibly successful, and some of them success is getting out. Like someone like Kurt Phillip that I work with, he's working, I don't know, 3-4 hours a week or something, and his goal was just to get out, let the company grow on its own. Some people want to be involved in the business, but like yourself, get out of the day to day, and they just, they want to get up at a higher level and do the things that really matters.
Mm.
So it doesn't really matter what the goal is, but it's like learning the management skills is just such an absolute game changer, right?
Mm.
I've recently worked with Farid Kasoni, who is also
Mm-hmm.
in a similar niche to yourself, and he have a great team, but in a similar situation, right? He have managers that was doing a lot of the right stuff, but they just, a little bit of more education really just take them to the next level, and
Right.
that's core. In
Yeah.
terms of the SEO Mastery Summit, so what happened was when I left the corporate world, initially I was coaching all these corporate clients, but then
Right.
eventually I started coaching smaller business owners and so on. And I found pretty quickly that SEOs is definitely a niche of people that are not particularly great at managing people. So there's a lot of introverts, there's a lot of nerdy people who love sitting at home, hiding behind their screen.
Yeah.
And the thing is, many of the SEOs you look at, you're like, this guy is brilliant enough to make 100 million or make a lot more money, right? But they're not, because they're lacking these business skills. And someone like Matt was a great example, right? Like Matt is super introvert, an amazing guy, but very introvert. And that was it. Both helped made him struggle within his team. But just from a business standpoint, when you start learning this stuff, right? When you start learning management, like it's learning a new skill. Like
Mm-hmm.
you're not going to get it in 5 minutes. And everyone that comes to me says, "Oh, I'm not good at managing." And I'm like, "How much time did you spend on it? Like you spent 5 years learning SEO, and
Right.
you spent like less than 5 minutes learning management. So yeah, of course you're not good." Like if you go out on the street and pick a random person who never heard about SEO and you give them 5 minutes worth of training, they're not going to be a great SEO,
Right.
right? So
Right.
it does take a little bit of time, but
Yeah.
again, for most smart people, when I go through it with them, like my training is typically a day, right? So most of the clients I work with, they started out with a 1 day training, and then we do an hour follow up every so often. But 1 day's training can really make a huge difference to most companies.
Wow.
Um, and yeah, that's where SEO started up. So what happened was I was working with a lot of clients in the SEO industry. Probably about 30% of my clients have from that niche, if you will. And during COVID, everything shut down, all the events shut down, and so on. And I was
Yeah.
like, well, let's do a virtual one, which we did, and that was very successful. We very quickly got a lot of great people on. We had, I think, our peak event, we had more than 10,000 people joining and watching
Mm.
live. So it became big. And obviously, I network a lot, so I knew a lot of people, got the best of the best people in, and made it do very well.
Yeah.
And then as soon as COVID was over, we were one of the first events where I said, let's take this thing live. So I've obviously been to hundreds of events in all different niches all around the world. And one of the things is every time you go to an event, there's always things you want to change. Like you go to an event and say, that was great, but, and I'm sure like ours is no different. I'm sure if other people go to our event, there's things they would change, right? But for me, this has been the opportunity to create the event that I want to be at, right? Yeah. Like my goal is not just to create a money machine or something. My goal is very honestly to create the best SEO event on the planet. Our focus is not, so we have 400 attendees, and our goal is not to make it bigger. Our goal is to make the attendees better. And what I mean with that is increase the quality of the attendees so that the outputs and what people learn is even more, right? Because the most valuable thing at an event is the best people, right? So it's the best speakers and it's the best attendees. And if you can keep, if you can keep bringing them back, like from the first to the second year, we had about 70% of people from the first year came back on year two, which again was obviously it showed us that we were doing things really well. And two, it also showed that we could keep hold of the good people, because again, if you run events and you keep having the best people come back, that attract other great people, and that keeps increasing the quality of your event overall, right? So yeah, that's the thing. For me, fundamentally, absolutely love events. I love other people's events, and I probably love my own event even more. And it's definitely a pleasure to be able to do things the way I love doing them. I mean, all our sponsors, all our speakers, everyone is generally have amazing feedback. We just put for the sponsors, we just put up for next year's event. We put up for all the existing sponsors. We give them sort of first dibs on next year's sponsorship, and we've already sold 80% of our sponsorships are sold out. So again, it's everyone want to come back, right? Which is obviously a great sign, and we're in a very good spot. So.
So there's so many things that I love about, well, certainly like just top level presenters that you have. I love the venue. You've got it not at the Holiday Inn, right? You got the Intercontinental, beautiful facility, beautiful venue, and you do something that I'm not sure that I've seen any other conference do, in that I can get a ticket, like sitting here in Cleveland, listen to the live, like here's the schedule, right? Somewhere there was an agenda on here. Here's the agenda, right? I can go and look at this agenda, and I can tap in and I could listen live to whoever, right?
You can't listen live. No, it's only in person. So
it's only in person now. So that was
in person. Yes. Yes.
We wanted to do that though, where I can
listen. That was only for our online events. So
okay. And then I could buy the recordings if I wanted. I can re-listen, or if I didn't listen to everything live, then I can
Yeah, we have the recordings behind barrier. We wouldn't want Google listening too closely to them. So
nice. Yeah. Well, it's high on my list to get soon as I want to do the thing where I can go over there for like a month, 3 weeks, but I have to get my youngest, that's a junior in high school. I got to get her out of high school and into college so I can take off the time with my wife. 2025 event. Do you have the dates yet?
Yes, 10th of March. So tickets. We sold a lot of the tickets to the last year's attendees when on the closing date, but the remaining tickets will be put for sale on September 1st this year, and the dates will be March 10th for 5 days. So it's a 5-day event. The starting price is probably $500-600 or something like that.
Yeah.
And that's the cool thing with Asia. So one of the key things, we're doing a 5-day event, and that's because most of the audience is coming from Europe and
Right.
Europe, Australia, US. So when you're flying that far anyway, you might as well make the most of it. So we're doing a full 5-day event, and yeah, 500-600. So it's if you compare to many of the events in the US, it's significantly cheaper. We had we had a couple of people last year come from New York, and they were like, well, we can get the flight, the hotel, and the event ticket for the same price as just an event ticket in the US, right? So, so it's not super expensive, and it's definitely a once in a lifetime experience. Vietnam is an amazing country, and as you said, I definitely recommend taking some time either before or after the event to explore a little as well.
Yeah, no kidding. All right, so in March 10th of 2025, tickets go on sale. So the way you stated it, there is a finite number of tickets then of attendees.
Yes.
Is that right?
Yeah, we only have 400 tickets. So
Okay.
again, we sold out last year, and we will definitely sell out this year as well. So, but there's 400 tickets in total, and the rest of the remaining tickets will be set for sale on September 1st.
Yeah. Nice. All right. Well, congrats on this, and this is exciting. I'm hoping that I will get there in 2027. That's my goal.
Good.
That seems so far away from now, right? Such a long time. But for me and my family, that would be like, okay, now I can go and take bigger trips like that instead of just a few days out. My wife can come along. All right, that sounds good. Well, listen, Mads, thanks so much for hanging out with us for an hour. I absolutely appreciate it. And it's always so fun to talk with you. I learned something every time. So, it's hopefully it was a good experience for you as well.
Likewise. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Well, listen, brother, enjoy your European travels during the months that you're traveling here right now. And I hope to see you again soon.
Yes, likewise. Have a good one, Randy. And thank
All
you very
right.
much for today.
Thanks, Mads. And everybody, again, be sure to like, subscribe. Next week, I've got a great mind in the SEO industry. Gareth Boyd will be a lot of fun. A guy from Australia that runs a very nice agency and is also a partner in a few other businesses that I think that we'll explore. So listen for Gareth next Tuesday on Hot Off the Press. All right. Have a great week. And again, thanks, Matt.